The new teacher who was bullied by the school principal and some teachers. Hi guys, I greet you all again in the name of God. Please, if you really want to enjoy this story, go to episode 1. You will enjoy everything. This is Mrs. Okafor, a rich billionaire who owns so many schools but discovered that corruption has eaten into the bone marrow of her schools. She decided to disguise herself as Miss Ayodele as a new teacher, teaching in that same school so that to fish out the bad eggs and flush them out herself. So relax for this final episode. Thank you very much. One day, while discussing a project with her students, she overheard a conversation between two teachers.
I can't believe you are still asking for bribes from students.
Said one teacher called Mr. Anthony.
Don't you have any shame? He
Asked disgusted
mind your business. Replied.
by the other teacher, Mr. Orwell.
After all, you are doing the same thing. You have no right to attack me.
He said angrily.
Your own is getting too much. Haba, I beg, slow down so that it won't be noticed.
Advised Mr. Anthony.
Advise yourself first, Oga.
Mr. Orwell said and left him walking away in anger.
Don't ever confront me again because of this.
Meanwhile, the school janitor was passing and overheard them too. She hissed and said, "Now wow, look at how these teachers are extorting money from these students and enriching themselves. A pity for their parents, shall. No wonder everything is expensive here, which made some parents withdrawing their kids." She said, "I hope they didn't succeed in running this school down. I beg you, I still need this job." She concluded and was about to go her way when Miss Ayodele excused herself from the students she was discussing with. Rushing to the school janitor, she called her. Hey, please wait." The janitor turned. "Hope you overheard what those teachers said just now," Miss Ayodele said in a haste, looking at the janitor. "Yes, Miss Ayodele, but it is not a new thing. It is a normal thing among some of the teachers in this school," the janitor said dismissively. "Really? Let's go and report them to the principal at once," Miss Ayodele suggested. "Which principal? Mrs. Effiong, you mean?" She laughed a little and said, "Unfortunately, my innocent teacher, she is fully in the game too. Why did you think they frustrate your guts in this school? My dear, you can see me as an ordinary low-life school janitor, as they call me, but nothing passed over me in this school without my knowledge," the school janitor added. "Just keep up being honest and hardworking, my dear innocent teacher. Do not succumb to their pressure. God is watching," she advised. Miss Ayodele noticed that the school janitor speaks good English and she asked, "Madam, your spoken English is polished. What is your educational qualification?" "Please pardon my curiosity," the school janitor smiled sadly and replied, "No problem, my dear. Sometimes I even forgot that I have BULLIED in educational management and policy. But due to the condition of this country, I could not find good job And when I came here in search of job, I was told to pay 150,000 naira before they could hire me as one of the teachers, she said weakly, gathering her mop and buckets. What? Who authorized that? Asked Miss Ayodele in shock, almost forgetting that she was still in disguise. The principal said that it is the management procedure, the janitor said, spreading her hands, looking up with a faint hope. Which management? My own management? When? How? Miss Ayodele asked rhetorically, oblivious of the janitor's confusion. Miss Ayodele, Miss Ayodele, what do you mean? She asked, skeptical. Oh, my dear, nothing, Jare. I am just overwhelmed with what is happening. She lied, trying to cover up. It's well, my dear. I even paid that 5,000 naira to get this one, but at least it is better than nothing, the school janitor said weakly. It's okay. Please, I would like you to give me your CV. I have my distant cousin that I will beg to look out for teaching job for you. With God's help, we will succeed. Miss Ayodele assured the school janitor, who thanked her very well, and they left. She promised her that she would be bringing the CV by the next day. As Miss Ayodele went to a secluded environment, she put a call across to her PA, Mr. Darlington, and told him to send a mail across to the management and staff of Goodwill Memorial Academy, Ajao, informing them that she, Mr. Okafor, the CEO, will come in person for clinical inspection in their school. Mr. Darlington replied,
Okay, ma'am. But, madam, isn't Dr. Okezie in charge of clinical inspection of schools? Why are you intending to take up the task, ma?
he stammered. Do as I ordered, Mr. Darlington. Schedule the meeting next week, Monday, for I will be back from my trip by then. Understood? Miss Ayodele ordered, strictly and professionally.
Sure, madam. I will do it as soon as possible. Bye.
Mr. Darlington said, concluding the call as he hung the call. Satisfied, Miss Ayodele thought for a while and resolved to taking permission from Thursday and Friday in order for her to prepare herself very well, claiming that she is sick so that she will take proper permission from the principal. As she was going towards the principal's office to take the permission from the principal, she overheard Mrs. Bello and Mr. Deji, her culprits, whispering amongst themselves. I can't believe she, a low-life teacher like her, can just come into this school and change everything. Just imagine her, said Mrs. Bello disgustedly, with anger.
Don't mind her. She's just a foolish old maiden. Who go marry this over-sabi self, prognosing into everything ancient of days like her?
Mr. Deji said mockingly. Abeg, leave the dead to bury the dead, Jare. My guy, hope Mr. Allwell has seen you concerning that deal. Mrs. Bello asked Mr. Deji, changing the topic.
Yeah, but he said that Mr. Anthony cautioned him about it. Imagine Mr. Anthony.
Mr. Deji said angrily. You said Mr. Anthony. That dude is forming good man. Oh. We know him. Oh. Let him be careful. Let him be careful, unless we boss him. Imagine spoiling our business, spoiling our show, warned Mrs. Bello angrily.
Don't mind the fool. He is becoming too annoying these days. I swear, but don't worry. We hold his particulars. I know what to do.
Mr. Deji said angrily, and they left together. Meanwhile, Miss Ayodele overheard every bit of their conversation. She nodded her head and said to herself, enough is enough. This bunch will feel my wrath on Monday. She went straight to the principal's office. In the principal's office, Principal Effiong was discussing with her vice, Mr. Thompson, about the mail she got from the board management that the CEO herself will be coming on Monday for clinical supervision. She was so overwhelmed with the news and was busy planning on how she would be on the CEO's good book. Meanwhile, none of them had seen the CEO in person, and they heard about her strict and professional approach to business. As they were discussing, Miss Ayodele knocked and the principal ushered her in. Miss Ayodele, how may I help you? Mrs. Effiong asked, looking at her with disgust. Please, madam, I want to seek for sick leave. I am not feeling fine, Miss Ayodele pleaded, feigning sickness. You are sick, Abi? Asked Mrs. Effiong, looking at her up and down, sizing her. Yes, madam, Miss Ayodele replied innocently. Mrs. Effiong was enveloped with a kind of joy in her heart as she thought that this is a perfect time to deal with Miss Ayodele. She thought within herself that she will report Miss Ayodele to the CEO for being absent without official duty. Let me see how they will ignore this particular crime, she thought, smiling slyly. Well, Miss Ayodele, you are permitted. Just take your time. You hear? She advised with fake concern. Then Miss Ayodele gave her the permission letter and left, thanking her. The principal tore the letter immediately Miss Ayodele left. Rubbish. All I know is that you didn't take any permission. He spat out, tearing the permission letter that Miss Ayodele gave her. She laughed hysterically while the vice principal, Mr. Thompson, smiled wickedly too. Let's
See how she will escape this one. The
vice principal added. Finally, the day the CEO will visit the school came, and everybody was prepared for it. The management and staff of Goodwill Memorial Academy were at their best dressing and behavior. When Miss Ayodele came, as usual, she felt off because no one told her about the visit. She seemed lost and asked the janitor what was going on. The almighty CEO is visiting today. Don't you know? She asked surprisingly. Really? No one told me. You know, I didn't come to school on Thursday and Friday because of my illness, Miss Ayodele said sadly. Chai, these people are mean, oh. They're supposed to inform you now, poor lady. The janitor said sympathetically. It's well, my dear. It's well, my friend. God is in control, oh, and no man is God. I'm telling you. Let me rush to the staff room, Miss Ayodele said and rushed off. Yeah, these people are just wicked. Go, please, help this innocent teacher who found herself in the midst of these wolves, the janitor added finally and left. Meanwhile, in the staff room, some teachers were murmuring and laughing as Miss Ayodele entered. She greeted them. Good morning, my colleague. Ahem, good morning. How is your health? I hope you took enough abo, for I know you could not afford a good medical care now. You are just a low-life teacher, Mrs. Bello said mockingly with wicked smiles hanging on her lips. Some of the teachers busted out laughing loudly at Miss Ayodele, while one of the teachers said in anger to Mrs. Bello, "Why are you always mean to Miss Ayodele, eh? Mrs. Bello, this is not fair at all. You better shut up your mouth, for I was not referring to you." Attacked Mrs. Bello angrily. It's okay, Ifeoma, it's okay, said Miss Ayodele to the teacher who was trying to defend her. Turning to Mrs. Bello, I am getting better now, Mrs. Bello. Thanks for your concern, said Miss Ayodele while she went to her drawer to collect her lesson notes and school diary, but found them missing. Who took my lesson notes and diary? She asked furiously. Today of all days, who took my lesson notes and diary for Pete's sake? She kept on asking, feeling frustrated.
Look at who is even looking for lesson notes and diary. Do you have one? Do you have lesson notes and diary? I thought you only danced and played in the classroom. You make your lesson fun. Mrs. Fun, Essence of Days. I beg, go and sit down. Stop deceiving yourself. You don't have any lesson notes and diary.
Mr. Deji said, making fun of her. I told you earlier that we don't want your kind in this school. I can't wait for the CEO and the board of management to kick you out today, Mrs. Bello said disgustedly, laughing hysterically. Honestly, this is not fair at all. This is not fair. I know some of you stole my lesson notes. You just want to jeopardize my work. This is not fair, Miss Ayodele said amidst frustration. As they were talking, they noticed a convoy of jeeps entering the school premises and everybody comported themselves. Miss Ayodele was filled with emotion and disappointment. In the school boardroom, the board of management led by Dr. Okeze and Mr. Darlington sat around the table. They invited the principal and teachers in. They came in except Miss Ayodele. When they asked the principal, Mrs. Effiong, the whereabouts of Miss Ayodele, their new teacher, she stood up and said, "Good morning to you all. It is so overwhelming and so unfortunate that Miss Ayodele's incompetence is too much in this school. She neglects her duties and seldom goes inside the classroom to teach. She talks rudely at everybody. She extorts money from students, and to crown it all, she skips school without permission. I don't even know whether she's inside school. She's inside the school premises that because she comes to school anytime she likes. If you are doubting me, look at this register. You will notice that she skipped school on Thursday and Friday last week. She did not even take any permission from me at all. She just come to school any day she likes without even minding anybody. Just take a look at our register. She showed Dr. Okeze the register where the staff clock in and clock out while they come to school and go home. Dr. Okeze checked the register with amped attention, noticing something strange. He noticed that Miss Ayodele's signature is the same thing as the CEO's signature, Mrs. Okafor. As Dr. Okeze went through the register, he was so shocked. He was confused, and he decided to know who this Miss Ayodele is. Immediately, he demanded for Miss Ayodele's presence. When he demanded for Miss Ayodele's presence, the principal sent Mrs. Bello to go and call Miss Ayodele. Meanwhile, as the principal and her cohorts, Mrs. Bello and Mr. Deji, saw the rage in Dr. Okeze's eyes, they were so happy that their plan is working already. Immediately, Mrs. Bello went out to call Miss Ayodele. When Mrs. Bello went out to call Miss Ayodele, Dr. Okeze was busy asking,
Who is that Miss Ayodele? I want to see her. Who is she?
Immediately, Miss Ayodele came in. I am here, a familiar voice said gracefully as the whole board of management stood up and greeted.
Welcome our honorable CEO, Mrs. Okafor.
Miss Ayodele, or should I say Mrs. Okafor, walked in majestically to the amazement of the principal and her cohorts. No, this can't be true, Mrs. Bello said in shock.
You can't be the CEO. You are just Dr.
Deji stammered in shock. Ancient of days, right? Mrs. Okafor completed while sitting down gracefully on her seat. The principal and her cohorts knelt down begging. Madam, we are sorry for our incompetency, they begged profusely. It is the devil's work, they added, crying. It's enough. Thank God you know that you are incompetent, but before I go on, somebody should fetch me the school janitor. Mrs. Bello rushed out and fetched the school janitor. As the school janitor walked in with fear, she was shocked to see Miss Ayodele on the CEO's seat. She dropped her mop immediately and closed her mouth with her two hands. In amazement, Miss Ayodele, she shouted. Mrs. Okafor smiled and said, My dear friend, sit down. I will explain everything to you. She ushered the school janitor a seat and turned to Mrs. Effiong and her cohort. You know what? I had rumors of misconduct and corruption in this school and decided to investigate it myself. Hence disguising as an ordinary teacher. Just because you people could not initiate me into your corruption and embezzlement of funds, you resorted to bullying and mounting pressure on me, she said, looking as Mrs. Effiong, Mrs. Bello, and Mr. Deji. Especially you, the principal. You often disrupt my teaching, degrading me in front of the students. Why? Just because I refuse to do things your way. You even lied against me in front of my board of management, saying that I did not seek for permission before being absent from school. Were you not the person that granted me sick leave? Immediately I left, you tore the letter I gave you, Mrs. Okafor said, looking straight at Mrs. Effiong. But, madam, Mrs. Effion stammered, trying to defend herself. Mr. Deji picked up courage and said,
With due respect, madam, don't you think that you are laying false allegations on our head? This is not fair, madam. You are trying to intimidate us with your position, and we know our rights.
allegation, you said. False allegation for that matter. You know what I love? You know what I love about you, Mr. Deji? Your courage. Mrs. Okafor commended. Mr. Deji smiled foolishly. This is why you and your sisters in crime stole my lesson note and diary just to jeopardize my effort, Mrs. Okafor said, resting her gaze on Mrs. Bello. This is unfair, ma. Mrs. Bello screamed. How can we do such a thing? She added, bending her face. You think I will accuse you all without concrete evidence? Eh? There is something you people do not know about this school. I planted hidden cameras everywhere, Mrs. Okafor said triumphantly, and the principal and his cohorts started sweating profusely as they realized the implication of the whole thing. Mr. Darlington, bring in the tech guy, Mrs. Okafor ordered, and immediately the school gatesman came in with his laptop. The principal exclaimed, Mr. Obinna.
Good morning, Mrs. Effion. My name is not Obinna but Clinton, and I disguised as the gatesman.
The gatesman said, opening his laptop and bringing out those evidences.
Oh my God, I am finished, oh.
Mr. Deji shouted, and tears streamed down his face. I trusted you all to run my school with integrity, said Mrs. Okafor, her voice shaking with anger. But it seems I was wrong. From today onwards, Mrs. Obi, the school janitor, becomes the school principal. And Mrs. Effion, Bello, Deji, Anthony, and all well will be relieved of their duties, Mrs. Okafor finalized. Mrs. Obi was overwhelmed with joy and fell down with tears, thanking Mrs. Okafor. Stand up, my friend. Your diligence, honesty, determination, and resilience have fetched you this position, coupled with the fact that you have impeccable credentials. Congratulations, my good friend. Keep up the good work. Mrs. Okafor shook Mrs. Obi, smiling with admiration. Let the police in, please, Mrs. Okafor ordered strictly. Police.
Mogbe, I am finished. Madam, please, my wife is still pregnant, oh.
Mr. Deji cried out as the police personnel came in to arrest them. Please, madam, have mercy on us, the rest cried out as they were led away by the policemen out of the boardroom. Turning to the rest of the board of management, Mrs. Okafor apologized for not letting them in on the plan, stating that anything that is worth doing is worth doing well. That is why she decided to correct the wrong and flush out the bad eggs herself. She charged them to always be honest and diligent in their work and shun corruption. She always pointed out that any teacher that is corrupt and polluted in mind has nothing to offer to his or her learners, because teachers give out what they have inside them. That is why they are made to mold the future generation. And to crown it all, she ended the speech by saying that teachers are great indeed. No controversy. The end. Now we come to the end of our story. Thank you very much, guys. I love you people for watching my stories and listening to it. Please don't fail to subscribe to my YouTube channel, comment, and share. Give it a thumb up, please. And please comment, because I need your comments. Criticize. I always need critics, so that our stories will be more educating, entertaining, and interesting. Bye, friends, and stay safe.